Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Jeff and Steve. G'day, mate.
How are you?
Good, mate. Good.
Where's the big fella?
Well, who cares? But what we're doing today is we're doing... what are we doing, Steve? What's the name of this title? We were playing around with...
We were playing around with it because it's all about what everyone's got, which is to do with our screens.
Yep.
And we decided on screen saver.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all about, how does watching a screen all day and all night sort of affect us.
Well, it's very topical at the moment. I mean, there's a lot of news coming out, especially with children and video games, but also the amount of time people are spending on social media, looking at screens, nighttime. And look, it covers a lot of ground. I mean, we've spoken before about how screen time, especially before going to sleep, whether it be TV or the iPhone or computers, can disrupt circadian rhythms. We know all about that.
Yep.
But there's some quite serious health side effects, Steve. I mean, and I know that a lot of people know about things like depression and people know about, other issues. And you've done a bit of research into it. We're going to break that down. But before we get into it, Steve, it's funny, just off here, we were talking about, screen stuff. We're talking about some cool movies like...
Yes.
What was that one?
Hear No Evil, See No Evil.
Yeah, great film.
Okay.
So you've got to watch that.
I've never seen it. I'm not naming a porno.
No,
good. Okay.
And we were talking about social responsibilities and the fact I said that when I was young and stupid, I used to illegally download movies. And our tech guy said that he used to as well too, and he used to go onto the dark web. So it's like, actually...
And I said, what's the dark web?
Yeah, exactly. What's the dark web?
You can't tell me.
Yeah, I mean, screens, Steve. I mean, they absolutely... permeate every area of Western society and in our lives. And I mean, there's more phones now than what there are people in Australia. It's just, you can't get away from the screens. But what's the big problem, Steve? I mean, and here's the thing, right? If you think about it, if there is an issue with screen time, which again, we know that there are, you wake up in the morning, and it's funny because I just had a meeting with some of the guys in the States that we're working with, and they said, the first thing I do in the morning, even before I have a pee, is I check my phone, right? So as soon as they wake up in the morning, before they get out of bed, they're checking emails and text messages and, social media and all the rest of it. Yeah. And I'm sure that's not unusual. In fact, I guarantee that many people in that sort of, 15 to 35-year-old age group, probably the first thing that they do in their pathetic little lives is check social media to see what other people have said about them. No, I'm just kidding. But they're probably straight away, they're looking for social media. And if not, they're looking for emails. So straight away you wake up, then you come to work. And what do a lot of people do? I mean, God bless tradies, they're outside getting cancer. I'm kidding. They're outside, in the sun and they're not doing it. But a lot of people, office workers, myself included, first thing I do, mate, I get to work and straight away I'm then in front of two computer screens because I've got dual monitors, or I take my laptop into meetings for probably the next 6 out of the next 8 hours. Oh,
absolutely. And it's worse than that because, you go home and your form of entertainment is...
TV or computer games.
Exactly.
So then, again... and then I've probably got my phone next to me. So then I'm watching TV.
Yes.
I'm then... I've got my phone, actually, to tell you the truth, Steve, I probably look at social media maybe once a week, maybe once every couple of... I can't stand it most of the time. I mean, there's a few interest groups that I'm on and, I get the soccer and stuff like that. But most of the time, I know, though, a lot of people, you see them when they go to restaurants and they're waiting for their food or any opportunity where normally people might make eye contact with someone else or, it's straight up onto the phone. It's almost like a security thing. I've got my phone up so I can kind of create this virtual bubble. Anyway, but so then it's more screen time when you get home. And it could be video games or, in front of your computer if you're playing a PC or watching TV with your little... Then you're going to bed.
Yeah.
So the amount of screen time that we've got is crazy. All right. So then what's it doing to us?
Okay, so what's it doing to us is it's distracting us from doing physical activity. So let's just start there. Now, I know you play soccer. You play social soccer. You're pretty good at it.
I like to call it football, Steve, but I'll forget you for the Americans and for the Socceroos in Australia. But yeah, anyway. But
So do you play more soccer physically on a thing or on a computer?
Well, I do actually play FIFA. No, with training and when I'm playing football in a regular season, I'll be actually playing more physical soccer.
More physical soccer.
Yeah.
So the problem is that while we're doing this on a screen, we're not doing what we really probably should be doing, which is training, exercising, and all that sort of thing. Now we see at the gym, like I go this morning, most people have their phone with them at the gym, and they're
doing both then.
Yeah, they're taking photos or they're listening to music.
Well, I've heard, and this is very true.
Yeah.
That if you don't take a selfie after a workout, did the workout really happen?
Didn't happen.
Or does the actual benefits actually work? Because I'd say many people would say no by the way that they post selfies after a gym
I know.
session.
Yeah, you actually have to prove that you've done that. It started off, people would send me photos of their food because I'm a nutritionist, and it's like, why do you care what you eat for lunch? I really don't care. But it's such a big part of everyone's life, these screens, that it infiltrates even a gym workout. I don't take I go to the gym to lift weights like an idiot. I don't go there to watch a screen.
But even in front of the screen, if you're on a treadmill, which is a pet hate of yours.
Beck does that.
But yeah, okay.
So it's a bit scary. So it can distract you from doing physical exercise, and so that's one of the negative things. But we're not really focusing on that today. We're focusing on the physiological effects of having a screen up against your face. Now, you've got to remember, most people hold their phone in their hand and it's about a foot away.
Sure.
Okay, and quite often. And a lot of people will watch TV and then during the ad breaks pick up their phone.
See, people, what's an ad break?
Yeah.
Like it's maybe if I pause Netflix or something. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because we were watching TV the other day and we actually watched, I think, something on like one of the major networks, and it was live. It wasn't recorded or... And it's just like, oh man, I forgot about ads. Anyway, but go on.
And so you could conceivably have to be in front of two screens.
Right.
For your evening. During the day you're in front of two screens and your phone, of course.
Yep.
And so you get a lot of this screen time. And the $1 million question is, well, what is it doing to you? And we know it's distracting people from physical activity, and that's bad. The kids of today, go home after work and play the computer games, and instead of playing, tiggy on the bikes like we used to.
Well, I really want to break down what's happening with children later, because I hear some alarming stories, not just from other parents, but even from my son. Yes. And again, maybe there's some bragging going on there. But anyway, Steve, we'll get to that.
All right. So there is a big it is a distractive thing. So it's kind of like eating junk food. If you're eating junk food, you're not eating healthy food.
Sure.
So there's that distractive thing. So you're not getting that calories of nutrients. Mm-hmm. You're getting empty calories. So that's the same with screen time. Is you're not doing something that's physically benefiting your body. Yeah. You're actually harming your body.
Yep.
And that's where it comes into. And how does it harm your body? In many, many ways. And there's so many ways. You mentioned kids. We can talk about kids for a sec. There's a very recent paper published in Molecules this year which talks about how it actually leads to autism.
Really?
So yeah, and there's two mechanisms for autism. It's a bit scary. So let's say you're a mum and you're having a child and you're using your screen in the evening, like an iPhone or any sort of screen. Then it suppresses a chemical in your brain called melatonin. Mm-hmm. Melatonin's released in the pineal gland in your head. And when you're exposed to blue light, which is the predominant light of sunlight, because as you know, the sun is made up of white light, and most of that light, the longer wavelengths, the red and the yellow, is reflected off the atmosphere. Yeah, and the blue is refracted towards the Earth. So that's why the sky's blue. Right. If you're wondering, I don't know if anyone is, but that's why we have blue sky. So blue sky, most mammals are programmed to go, right, blue sky, I'm awake. It's daytime.
Yeah, right.
That's called a circadian rhythm. So that's why blue light keeps us awake.
So it's funny because the Qantas are putting in the new Dreamliners at the moment, and they've gone a lot into humidity in the plane, but also into the colours that they've put the plane as well too. So I think they're using more of a reddy purpley sort of a colour, right? Yep. So that's going to improve the quality of sleep when you're sleeping.
Absolutely, because blue light suppresses melatonin production and release from the pineal gland. So if you're looking at blue light like this, or like this, or like this.
Steve's got his hands out in front of him. So
he's reading a book, yes. With a phone in front of you, then that's suppressing melatonin release. Now you might go, well, so what's melatonin? Well, melatonin does lots of things in the body, a huge amount of things. But one of the main things it does is it helps you sleep.
Now, Steve, that's true, and specifically I think of people watching TV before bed. They say get rid of the TV in the bedroom. That's one of the major reasons which we have stated before.
Absolutely.
Don't watch TV before going to bed because the light getting into the back of your eyes effectively arouses you and not ready for performance in the bedroom, but it keeps you awake, and
that's right.
And that can cause a problem.
And the blue light...
See, my problem is that Tony looks at me and she's aroused. So, what do we do about that, Steve?
What can you do about that? It's it's difficult, isn't it?
Mm.
So the
okay, everybody knows that's not true.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So the problem with this melatonin stuff is that it can upset your sleep. And there'll be people out there going, oh, yeah, well I watch TV and I sleep fine. Good luck to you, because melatonin levels, you get enough melatonin to sleep, but it does suppress melatonin production in the brain. Now, you might say, well, so what? I sleep anyway. Well, melatonin does lots of other things. Lots and lots of other things. One of the main areas it works is with your sex hormones. So if you haven't got correct melatonin secretion, then your sex hormone levels play up. And I'll simplify this. It regulates testosterone production. It also regulates progesterone production. And it actually antagonizes estrogen a little bit. Now, when I say antagonizes, it kind of modulates, it reduces it a bit. Right. So it reduces those three hormones a fair bit. Now, this was borne out in 2001. There was a big study done on nurses. 78,000 nurses were interviewed. And nurses are classically studied because their natural week includes 4 nights of night shift a month. Right. So they have about 1 night shift per week. And therefore, their melatonin levels are about 50% suppressed. And what they found in this massive nurses study is that suppression of melatonin greatly increases the risk for breast cancer.
Wow. Okay.
So that's scary. And that was the first associative study. In other words, they associated melatonin secretion with lack of sleep. Now, that doesn't mean it's causation. But since then, they've done studies that show how melatonin regulates sex hormones.
And I think we talk a lot about associated risk factors.
Yes.
And the thing is that one in isolation may not be good, but I mean, it may not be an issue in terms of your body's own resilience, other things that you might be doing to offset that as well too.
Yeah.
I mean, again, why take 3 steps forward, 1 step back? Why not just take 4 steps forward?
Correct.
But having said that, if you add that up with other, poor nutrition, stress, environmental factors as well too, all of a sudden you add all these things up, chance of getting breast cancer goes from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 20.
Correct.
So
I mean, a lot of the news lately, and since Angelina Jolie came out and said she has the BRCA gene. Now, the BRCA gene is the BRCA gene. There's 2 types, and that increases your risk of breast cancer. And if you've got that, people have had their breasts removed just because they've got that genetic
I don't
risk
like
factor.
that.
No, I don't like it either.
No, I mean, I think that there's other things that you can do in terms of your nutrition, getting to sleep early, removing screens, making sure you're detoxifying, obviously, the estrogen in your body, removing xenoestrogens. I mean, there's a whole heap of things you can do before you look at radical, surgery to obviously.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve, go on.
And one of those things is stop looking at blue screens because that suppresses melatonin.
So all I can say, though, in that case, Steve, I'm glad that I'm a male because I don't have breast tissue.
Oh,
well, actually, and there's a misnomer, by the way, because men can actually get breast cancer. So
we can.
Yes. Anyway, go on.
There is a study released called, and I'll just title this, and I can show it to the camera a bit later, but you'll love the title, Cell Phone Usage and Erectile Dysfunction. The 2 words that men hate.
Wow, absolutely. And this might prick up a few ears.
It will.
Excuse the pun.
Yeah, it won't prick up anything else.
No.
But basically what they basically said, and I'll just read the conclusion, I'll talk about how it all works. It says, we found a potential correlation with cell phone usage and negative impact on erectile function. And they basically said further studies are going down. This was the very first study studied in Andrology, which is a big journal, in 2013. They've since worked out what causes that. And that is that melatonin regulates the blood vessels inside your penis and other parts of your body. And inside your arteries, you've got this little gas called nitrous oxide. And this stuff is an antioxidant. Melatonin is a potent antioxidant that floats around the body. It protects that nitric oxide. So if you have a lot of cell phone usage, the blue screens and all that, it also suppresses melatonin, which suppresses not only testosterone production, but also suppresses the blood vessel dilation.
So obviously, therefore, stress is also oxidative. Is that why sometimes, and probably not the only reason, but I mean, obviously, stress means it's difficult to obviously obtain an erection as
Absolutely.
well?
Absolutely. Stress works by reducing adrenaline. So when you're stressed, there's usually some threat to your being, a fight or flight response, they call it. Now, stress releases adrenaline, and adrenaline constricts your blood vessels.
Right.
That's how it works, and increases your blood pressure to escape or fight or flight. Now, when you constrict your blood vessels, an erection is the dilation of the blood vessels. So this is working in the opposite direction.
Right.
And we don't want that when you want to have sex, but stress is actually a survival mechanism to fight the animal or to get away from it, to increase blood pressure. When you're exercising, that occurs naturally, and that's actually healthy short term, but long term stress. So then you've got the blue screen causing problems, and then you've got the stress from the blue screen if you're checking, say, emails or you're doing something stressful.
Of course.
On your phone, phones can be stressful.
Getting chewed out by your boss.
When I ran my business and I was getting constant, emails and everything all day and night, I would stupidly read them to try and deal with them, to try and keep on top of things.
Right.
And it's very detrimental to your health.
So again, if you're having performance problems in the bedroom, too much blue screen time, especially from your phone, could be causing problems with performance. Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And there is another mechanism of blue screens, and it may not be as applicable these days as it was maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But the use of laptops.
Yeah.
laptops, they used to call them laptops, they call them notebooks now. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah.
But people are resting them on their lap, and that's quite dangerous for your testes.
Well, I can imagine.
It releases a radiation measured in Gauss, and that can cause sterility.
Wow.
So they don't call them laptops anymore. I know it's not technically blue screen. You get the blue screen as well, but you get the radiation on your nuts.
I used to have this computer many years ago, and I'd use it on my lap all the time, a lot. And it was so hot, I actually got this little thing with fans on it that I could actually put on it, and that was obviously far more comfortable. But yeah, it's funny what you don't know, you know? So yeah, putting something that can heat up that quickly, like a little microwave on your nuts, is probably not the best idea.
And the microwave, and also the physical heat, because sperm likes 35 degrees. Your body temperature is 37.
Yeah. And
a battery and all that heats it up beyond that, so it kills sperm. That's why the old monks used to jump into the hot water before they had sex to reduce that was their contraception.
What monks?
Oh, you know, probably not monks, but the people in Tibet and that sort of thing, they go in those hot tubs and kill their sperm before they would do the business, and it would act as a contraceptive.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So that's not a good way if you're trying to get pregnant, but
Right.
if you're trying not to, you can kill your sperm by jumping in the hot water.
Wow.
Having a hot water bath.
Dangle the old tea bag.
Yeah, exactly. Tea bag and eat red pen. No.
Yeah.
So you know you get these problems, but going to blue screen and going back to the melatonin thing, it suppresses testosterone.
Yeah, just thinking. Sorry about the tea bag thing. That's only a cup of tea that John would want, I recken.
Yeah.
But anyway. Here comes the red pen.
Here it comes.
I think in terms of the blue light. So, what about blue blockers? This is something that's starting to come out now. A lot of glasses, and they're talking about these blue blockers. Sunglasses or this film. I know that I could even get these redone. My glasses that I'm wearing at the moment. Is it worthwhile, Steve? Does it work? Do you know?
Yes and no.
Right.
Firstly, it still produces light, but not as much blue light. Now, you've got to remember, blue light is a frequency of light.
Right.
So is a radio wave. It's a frequency of light the human eye can't see. Most of the electromagnetic radiation we can't see, but blue light starts at about 400 nanometers of wavelength of thing. So you can get glasses that filter that bit out.
Right.
Like sunglasses that filter out UV light.
Yes.
UV light is ultraviolet. It's lower or higher frequency than that. So it's beyond violet, the colour violet, so you can't see it. So these things can actually help reduce the blue light, because it is the blue light that suppresses melatonin production. Mm-hmm. So they will help, but you're still getting some blue light in your eyes because you can still see blue.
Of course. So, yeah, restricts. So maybe not a bad idea, but don't expect it to be everything that you need. So, Steve, let's talk specifically now about children, because this is something obviously I'm concerned about as well too, and you're hearing a lot of stuff about that. I know my son Clay, when he plays, so there's a game at the moment, and everybody's probably heard of it that's got children or of any age. This game called Fortnite, right? It's crazy. I think it's one of the world's most popular games at the moment. So everyone's playing it, and kids are getting a little bit addicted to it. You can play it on the consoles as well as playing it on your iPad. Oh. So what's happening now is that kids are getting so addicted to this game that they're smuggling their iPads into bed, and they're playing until all sorts of time in the night, which again, they're not sleeping, which is not going to help, but then they're trying to sleep after they've played the game. They're amped up. What I've noticed with regards to Clayton, if we allow him to play, normally on a weekend after 3 o'clock, we allow him to play his Xbox for a couple of hours, and that's fine. If we let him go any longer than that, he gets really cranky. I mean, and I've got a feeling it's got something to do with dopamine release, because if you're concentrating really strongly for a long period of time on something, your body releases dopamine, which is reward and pleasure, which obviously gives you that euphoric feeling. The problem is, like anything, even a drug, once you pump out the dopamine out of the brain, then you get a chemical imbalance, and that is normally followed by irritability.
Yes.
And again, his attitude reflects he's lost his Xbox quite a few times because of him mouthing off and all the rest of it, right? Yeah. But so what's going on, Steve? I mean, have I got it right?
You actually got it very accurately. It is a dopamine reward thing. Dopamine comes out when you've got that sense of achievement and reward. So when you achieve something, that feeling of satisfaction, yes, I've achieved that. If you want to, classically the drug is smoking that releases loads of dopamine. Right. And so you smoke dopamine, everyone's relaxed, and all of a sudden they haven't smoked for a few minutes or whatever, and they need more. And that's the addiction thing. So it's not a bad neurotransmitter. In fact, it's a very healthy one because it gives you that sense of reward. It's like that feeling you walk out after the gym. Yep. That's dopamine.
Or when you've played a good game of football.
Exactly. That's dopamine left, right, and centre, because dopamine is the building blocks to adrenaline.
Yep.
So it goes on and flows adrenaline. So you make dopamine and you're hyped up in the brain, and it goes on to adrenaline. You're hyped up the sport or playing your game, and all of a sudden that ends. And it's like, well, hang on, I want that. Give me more of that chemical. And it does cause irritation. And now there are synthetic drugs being released to give kids this dopaminergic reliance, stimulant medication.
Yeah, right.
Dexamphetamine or Ritalin, that sort of
They
drugs.
sound completely safe, Steve.
Yeah, beautifully.
Get them off the video games and get them straight onto the Ritalin.
But here's the problem. You're actually kind of accurate, because Little, and we'll just pick a generic Jenny or Johnny, has got those behavioural issues. It's like the way to fix it is to give them dopamine, give them a stimulant.
Surely, Steve, there's got to be natural ways to be able to obviously increase the production of dopamine as the types of foods. I mean, activities, obviously sport, you've mentioned, but I mean, surely we can do this without creating a chemical cocktail.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, foods that are rich in protein, that make tyrosine, which is the building blocks of dopamine, and phenylalanine. So things like beans and meats and those sorts of things, fish and eggs, those things are beautiful for your brain to increase dopamine levels naturally.
Yep.
And when you increase it naturally, it's not an artificial stimulant, so you're not going to be addicted. You can't get addicted to food. The human body is already addicted to food. Without it, you die.
Sure, yeah.
So it's not like the body's used to taking in food, so we've got no problems with eating, dopaminergic food, if I can call it that. When you get the artificial sweetness like caffeine, drives up dopamine.
Yeah, right.
Because it's a stimulant.
Mm-hmm.
And when it blocks the adenosine receptors in your brain, the body releases all this dopamine, which releases all this adrenaline, because dopamine is the building blocks to adrenaline.
Right.
So that's where caffeine gives you the hypey jitters thing, because it blocks the sedative part of your brain. It doesn't stimulate you directly, it just blocks the sedative part.
So, and again, talking back about ECAs, which is, caffeine and aspirin used together to obviously help burn fat. That's all, how it's working on that sort of thing, is it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And when you release adrenaline binds to the fat cells and releases fat. Because when you're exercising, adrenaline, your body burns fat.
Yeah.
And that's how it burns fat. That's why you should exercise to burn fat, not any aspirin caffeine way, because you want the natural adrenaline to burn fat.
Yeah. What's the E stand for again? I forget.
There was
ephedrine caffeine. Right? That was the old bodybuilding stack of the 1980s, and it's funny, which is banned now. But anyway.
I mean,
it worked. So it worked, and I think the aspirin was in there to help the negative feedback, wasn't it? So
and increases uncoupling of the mitochondria. So it's like put it simply, put your foot on the clutch when you're in a manual car. For those who know what a manual car is, or taking it out of gear, and you put your foot on the accelerator, so it burns off all this energy without achieving anything. So it uncouples the proteins bit biochemical. So what does this do for your brain? Well, this new paper says in kids it can cause autism. If the mum...
That's that. I mean, obviously a lot of people are probably going, step on a crack and you're getting autism nowadays. I mean, there's so many things that are pointing towards an association. And again, not cause and association is, again, for regular listeners, they understand that terminology, and that's where we've got to be careful. But there's been demonstrated associations between.
There is, and this is because this study shows about the damage of the circadian rhythms. So if your kid smuggles in an iPad and plays a blue screen iPad all night, and that can disrupt melatonin. Now, we know melatonin is beneficial for autistic kids. It's well tested. You give it to them and it improves them.
Right.
Okay. So there's some sort of lack of melatonin. Now, why is there this lack of melatonin? Well, they know that during fetal development, that's what this study is saying, that if the mother is using electronic equipment, that can reprogram the fetus's brain to getting more autism. This is 2018 study by Yin.
So, I mean, obviously we know that, prenatal, avoid soft cheeses, avoid seafoods, no cigarettes. We understand about the impact of alcoholism. Yep. I mean, I know there's some poor kids where, what do they call that again?
Fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah, which is horrible, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people recognise all of that. How many people have never thought about, oh my gosh, how close I allow electromagnetic devices too close to my baby?
Yeah, and don't beat yourself up if you go, oh my God, I used my phone when I was pregnant. This study was published in January 2018.
Yep. And so directly it's saying, how much use is Steve? I mean, what should people do?
Over 2 hours a day.
Over to it. So right. So, I mean, obviously we're talking about laptops, we're talking about phones, we're talking about, any of that sort of stuff.
Exactly. I've got a diagram here that I can show for those who watch the video that show how the mechanism of action of how it actually works. So we can we can overlay that later if you want to get online and watch the video, but it's a great diagram. I can read it out if you want.
Sure.
Basically, oxidative stress leads to central nervous system vulnerability, which causes neuro damage, brain damage, because of the lack of the antioxidant, and that leads to increased risk of, Asperger's in this case, or autism. Yeah,
wow.
It's just neuro damage.
Asperger's, which it's pretty full on. So, again, it's one of those things to be aware of is maybe limit the proximity and the duration of electronic devices when you're pregnant.
And get your melatonin levels up naturally. You can get your melatonin levels up by doing exercise, for example, and that's released at night. So make sure that you simply have a clear day and night. Like try and get out during the day and try and avoid the blue lights at night. So it's just going back to what we should be doing anyway, which is just not having, because screens are a pretty new thing. They haven't been around that long.
So, I mean, again, my father always used to recommend this as well too. He says, after you've finished watching TV at night, which almost everybody does in the Western world.
Yeah, I do.
Go and spend some quiet time and read for 10, 15 minutes.
Exactly. Go to bed and read a book.
Yep.
And try and avoid...
The screens, though, because the funny thing is, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't want to get sued by Amazon, but the Kindles and things like that, they are a different kind of light, though, aren't they?
They can be. My mother's got one, and I've seen it. It hasn't got that blue light. It's more like paper.
Right.
But here's another catch: is with your light beside your bed. You know how we've got these new LED lights which are wonderfully white. Okay, white light is made up of blue and red light.
Right.
So if you want the remember the old days of having the fluoro globes and that had the little filament? They've got less blue light in them. So
right.
Yeah, because white light is made up of blue and red and all the colours of the rainbow.
Yep.
If you get like and I'll call it a yellow light.
Yep.
They've got less blue light in it because it's yellow.
For my son, who's 4, about to turn 5, he had a little night light. We actually got a red salt lamp.
Perfect.
And we had that in his room, actually sort of tucked away so that it wasn't direct light. And once we changed from this flashing elephant thing, his sleep improved dramatically.
Right.
And a lot less getting up in the night, a lot less nightmares, a lot less of that. So
yeah, because if you're suppressing melatonin by having white light, which has still got blue light in it, then that's problematic. So you try and avoid that, either white light or blue lights.
Yep. And
the blue lights come off the screen because you got to remember, during the day, you want all the spectrums of the light. You want the melatonin to be made. The light hits the back of the retina and you make all this beautiful melatonin, which is so good for your sex hormones, so good for your brain, antioxidant, protects against Alzheimer's disease, another one, MS, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, all these diseases. So you want to make lots of that in your eye because you got to remember buildings are a fairly new thing too. Being outdoors is actually quite healthy for us. Not to be burnt to a crisp, but getting out in the sun is very healthy for us. So that's the mechanism of action for kids, and we know that now that with this melatonin relationship, there's new treatments for kids.
Right.
One of them is, of course, melatonin.
Yeah,
they just supplement time.
Which again, in Australia, I think you can go to your doctor and you can get prescribed that. Natural things that are high in melatonin, Steve, that you can consume as cherries, I think are quite high, aren't they?
Cherries.
I mean, again, you want to eat them fresh and seasonal, but I mean that's something that's pretty good. What else?
Well, you can make your own melatonin out of tryptophan foods.
Right, and again, tryptophan is banned in Australia. So
is melatonin.
Right, melatonin and tryptophan.
You can get it from Walmart in America.
Yeah, right.
That's how dangerous this stuff is.
Right.
It's one of my bugbears, so I don't want to get on the soapbox about that.
Yeah, I looked right into what happened with the manufacture of the contaminated tryptophan in Japan.
Yeah.
And it's a complete farce. And the fact that in Australia they still haven't overturned that. Turkey's quite high in tryptophan.
It is. Turkey's the classic.
I know that milk is, Steve. You're not always a huge fan of milk.
Not a big fan, but whey protein unfortunately is too.
And again, I know you're not a huge fan of whey protein, but I mean, again, what about cottage cheese?
Yeah, that would be high. The casein in that is quite high in tryptophan.
A little bit of cottage cheese isn't too bad for you, is it, Steve?
Not really. I mean, as long as you don't have it on biscuits and you have it all the time.
Yeah, but good sauce, cherries, turkey.
Yeah, just any sort of meats, any sort of red meats, because the human muscle and the animal muscles are high in tryptophan as well.
Cool.
So they're good to have, but just a normal amount so your body can make it. So to release the melatonin, you need that darkness, and that's where the trick comes from. Now, we open up another can of worms there with melatonin and what else it does throughout the body. It's also great for your immune system.
Well, that's terrible. No wonder it's illegal. Anyway, keep going.
No, it helps regulate. I've got a nice graph here, so I'll read it out to you. Basically, it helps suppress multiple sclerosis production. Now, if you look at MS, I'll just call it MS. MS occurs mainly closer to the poles you get. There's vastly higher incidence.
Close, so to the North and South Pole.
Correct.
Why?
Because there's less sunlight. And less sunlight means less melatonin.
During
less
the winter
D.
months?
Yeah. And during the summer months, it's often colder, so you don't go out as much.
Oh, right.
So, like, in Australia, think of Hobart in summer.
Hang on, wouldn't it be the summer months? Because, during the winter, there's virtually nothing, so you're hardly going outside.
And it's too
during
cold.
The summer months, it's still cold, I guess.
Yeah. And so you don't, like in Queensland here, it's spring and it's 25 and it's sunny and...
Just try 28, 29,
yeah,
I think.
it's pretty warm today, isn't it?
Mm.
So you have no problems going outside today for, getting some sunlight. So these, polar regions, North or South Pole, they have vastly higher rates of MS. And they thought it was something to do with the sun. And it could be vitamin D or melatonin. Now we know it's melatonin because melatonin regulates these things called intracellular adhesion molecules, which is where the immune system attacks the myelin sheath in the brain.
Right.
So we know there's a mechanism there of melatonin protecting against MS.
So someone who's got MS, Steve, potentially could add melatonin and see an improvement or at least stop the regression?
There are trials. It doesn't improve them, but it stops the progression.
I should say.
So it's a really, really good one to have. Now, MS, fluctuates. It comes and goes in a natural cycle. So it can be one thing you can add as a treatment. And you've got to remember, melatonin is, it's good for you.
Mm.
It's not like a drug that, like a immune suppressant drug. This regulates the immune system.
I know that a component of melatonin, 5-HTP.
Precursor, that is.
Is a precursor, is it? Very, very good. I know a lot of people use that for treating mild forms of anxiety and depression.
Absolutely. 5-HTP, 5-hydroxytryptophan, is the precursor to serotonin, which is the precursor to melatonin.
Right.
So it has this wonderful flow-on effect in your brain.
Nice.
And of course, you mentioned stress before. Stress just takes tryptophan and turns it into, we did a podcast on it, quinolinic acid.
Yes.
And so,
tryptophan steel.
Tryptophan steel.
Yep.
Is that what we called it? I can't remember the name. But that's the mechanism. So then the 5-hydroxytryptophan, you take about 100 milligrams to 300 milligrams. It's really great for your brain.
Right.
It's good for your brain. So other diseases like rheumatoid arthritis. So I'm kind of another autoimmune disease that melatonin, even though it boosts the immune system, it more regulates it. So it's a good one for people with autoimmune diseases. So have you ever heard people like, this is for our American audience, they go, I've got arthritis, so I'm moving to Florida or Queensland in Australia to help my arthritis.
Yep.
How do you think it helps your arthritis? More sunlight, more vitamin D, more melatonin, more regulation of your immune system.
Right.
It's not the temperature.
But wouldn't the temperature make it feel a bit more achy?
Well, it does, but you got to remember that even, I'm from Melbourne, the houses were heated. It didn't help your arthritis. In summer, it was hotter down there. Your arthritis was still crap because, you just got more exposure to the sunlight.
Okay.
So there's these other mechanisms in place that do that. Even things like SLE, another autoimmune disease, it helps. So there's a lot going on here. Inflammatory bowel disease, and you might go, well, how does melatonin, brain chemical, help your bowel? Well, you've got to remember that most serotonin is made inside your gut.
Yeah.
And serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. So it's not a big stretch that there's melatonin involved there.
Yep.
So, getting out in the sun is very good. And also it stops autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes.
Okay. Any more about screens, Steve?
Yeah. Well, remember, melatonin regulates that. So there is another one here where they did a big literature review on screens and kids. And this is where it gets scary.
And screen, Steve, is it? Is there much difference between a television screen and a computer screen, or a TV monitor?
Well, there is. See, nowadays TV monitors are not plasma anymore. Remember, they used to be plasma.
Yeah.
Now they're LEDs.
Yes, and what's better?
Well, LEDs for visual appearance, but plasma for blue light, because LEDs are actually not. They're actually light-emitting diodes. Right. I don't know if that's what LED stands for, if you don't know. So a light-emitting diode is wonderful because it pumps out all the spectrum of light, including the blue light. Okay? So
changing light bulbs from the old fluorescent to LEDs is obviously a popular thing because it's cheaper and saves you money in the long run.
Fantastic during the day. because you don't care about blue light during the
Right.
day because remember the sky blue and light.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's no problem with that. But at night, if you've got bright white light,
Well, let's face it, when's the time most? I mean, in an office, yes, but I mean, when's the time where you're putting on the lights?
I know it's scary. So at home we've got little bedside lamps that have got yellow LED lights. You can get the ones that just have a different what they call Kelvin or frequency of light.
Right.
And there's 2,000, 4,000 Kelvin, and you pick the ones that are more what they call warm white.
Right.
And you can get those LED ones. They're the same price.
Okay.
They're still LED, but they just cut out a lot of the higher frequency blue light.
Yep.
So that's the solution. You just put that as your bedside table.
That makes a good idea.
So you get a yellow LED light, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yep.
You can get them in the house, but they look crappy.
Yeah. Yep. No, definitely.
The other thing you can do at night is to reduce your LED exposure. Is if you're watching TV, turn most of the lights out.
Yeah.
Just have a small light on.
Light a candle.
Yeah, candle, absolutely perfect. So the problem with this is with blue screens has been mainly studied on children, and it really stuffs up their behaviour, as you've just elicited.
Outside of behaviour, Steve, any other things to be concerned of? I mean, obviously, chronic use is going to lead to some chronic illnesses.
Yeah, it does. And the most chronic one, probably the worst one, is cancer. That's
Right.
probably the worst one I found.
That's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. And that's because the blue screen reduces the melatonin.
Right.
And
all
that
comes back
leads
to melatonin.
all sorts of cancers.
Yep.
Yeah, all sorts of cancers. It does cause behavioural things and erectile dysfunction. And another study showing it stuffs your sperm. But really, cancer is the most chronic one. And there's so many cancers that it causes. It's absolutely scary.
Well,
And
today
this is all related to blue
we
screens.
haven't even really mentioned anything about radio frequencies and other waves as well too. Because I mean, this is all part of it. I mean, I know there's a lot of concern, or there has been over the years, about utilising mobile phones and brain tumours. We've heard a lot of studies about people keeping their mobile phones either in their bra or in their pocket, and all sorts of cancers specifically where that phone is. Which I know. Have they acknowledged that yet, Steve, or are they still denying it?
There was a study done that in 2013 was the first major study that showed that it does cause glial cancers.
Right.
And so that was a scary one because that was mobile phones. And then, because you're holding the mobile phone up to your ear, and of course it mildly heats your ear.
That's right. We did talk about that on the podcast, yeah.
Yeah. And so it does cause gliomas, which is a very bad sort of cancer.
Right.
It's arguably one of the most common ones in the brain. The astrocytoma is probably worse.
Right.
But this one still kill you.
So and then we've got Bluetooth.
Yep.
And then we've got again, we're all around now with 4G everywhere and 5G in places.
5G. There was an article on a current affair last night that I looked up today, and 5G has this wonderful thing of speed of data.
Yep.
So you might think, well, this is great, speed data, because everyone wants more speed. The national broadband's 100 megabits per second.
You're dreaming, Steve. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, at best. But this one's going to have 1.4 gig. So that's 14 times faster.
And this is not utilising any... See, the big problem with speed in Australia, you lucky bastards in America and Europe, even Kazakhstan has better internet speed than what we do here in Australia. We just got to get Skippy back on the wheel.
Absolutely.
But what it comes down to, though, is that you're talking now about not using the lines because, I mean, again, a lot of things like the NBN and a lot of things where speed was concerned, ADSL and what have you, utilised the lines. But it was the old ailing infrastructure, specifically the copper, that would actually significantly down-regulate the signal speed.
Correct.
So, therefore, you could have fibre optic, but once you got to an exchange, if there was copper there, immediately you'd reduce the speed down to a maximum of whatever the copper can
25 copper
Is
can
it right?
handle,
There you go. Which sounds awesome to me, by the way. I've got about 8 at home. But anyway, yeah, I know, it's pathetic. All I was going to say, though, is that, so people go, fantastic, 5G. But what is 5G doing? I mean, is this stuff, in the air? What does it actually do? I mean, and you said before, just because you can't see it, I still remember these stupid freaking politicians, and geez, they're wankers sometimes. They were sitting there, and this is when they were talking about recycling water. And I've said it before, but so they got all these people on this bloody current affairs show or whatever it was, I can't remember, and they lined them all up, and they had recycled water, and then they had normal tap water, and they gave it to them, and all these old people are going, oh, I can't even taste the difference, and and a mobile note of let's save the planet by drinking our recycled urine.
Yes,
fantastic. And it's like, I could give you half a dozen poisons that you can't taste or smell or detect, and they'll kill you in a minute.
Yeah.
And it's like, what sort of stupid taste test is this? The problem is, Steve, is that we are not aware, especially when there's not an acute reaction. It's something that is effectively chronic, where we're putting ourselves into a position over time. I worry a lot about it. I worry a lot about the interferences of different types of radiation. I mean, again, we know now about skin cancer. You're standing out in the sun. We can't see that happening, but it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
So what's the deal with this 5G?
Yeah, well, the $1 million answer to that is we don't know, because it's just rolling out now.
Right.
It's in some suburbs, but not in all. But here's the background. It can carry a huge amount of data. Okay, this is well tested. It's gone up to 70 gigabits, by the way. That's 70,000 times the fastest NBN. So it carries all this data, but how? It carries it through waves through the air.
Well, just like radio waves and for the TV and that.
Yeah.
But are they safe, Steve? I mean, surely they must be.
They are fairly safe, because the transmitting tower is Mount Cootha here, which is kilometres away.
Right. So even for people all around the world, if you've got big TV towers and radio towers, yep.
Yeah. And in 1956 in Australia, TV was brought out, and so we've had 70 odd years of testing this stuff, and it's pretty safe. Low frequency, low power by the time, but you have to have a big antenna on your roof to suck it all in, and it gets to your TV. Otherwise, your TV doesn't work.
Yep.
But you can have a little phone in your hand which can get vastly more data from a tower that could be behind you. It goes through your head.
Right.
So they don't know exactly what this massive amount of data will do. People are concerned about it. There is evidence that going near radio towers is quite dangerous. We've talked about talking on your phone, but what is this new paradigm of massive amount of data going to do to us? We just simply don't know. And you add to that the Bluetooth you mentioned, that everyone around you's got mobile phones. It's radiation everywhere.
Steve,
Scary.
I remember asking you, and I don't know if you had time to have a look it up or not. So I've got the new watches.
Oh, yeah.
What are these? I won't mention the brand, but it's a watch that sort of tracks my movement. I love it because it's great for when I'm playing football. I can even pull up maps, and it's got satellites, so I can see where I've run, how far I've gone, what my maximum speed was, how many, estimate of calories and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of cool. I've heard a lot of people now saying that these watches, the ones with the little lights underneath them that are going into you, and they're Bluetooth and all the rest of it as well too, are disrupting people's whole system. And some people have been experiencing chronic symptoms that it hasn't left until they've taken the watch off.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to have a look into that at all?
Again, it's all hearsay.
Right.
But I would almost hazard a bet that we won't know for another 10 years.
Right.
Because, who's going to do a study on that? I mean, the manufacturers aren't.
No.
Because they're going to go, we don't want to, even if there is something, they're not going to be overly confident because the technology is very new.
And look, to be fair as well too, we don't know. So we're not saying, hey, these things are causing it. But again, when there's sort of a bit of feedback and all the rest of it, I like to know, is there any empirical evidence? Is there any information, that we can point to? And unfortunately, at the moment, Steve, there's not.
Not there. There is empirical evidence where people have gone, I felt better after taking the watch off.
Isn't that anecdotal?
Anecdotal, but no. Yeah, no peer-reviewed scientific studies on this yet.
Yep.
I mean, there is with mobile phones now, and that was deemed as being safe. Remember, they were thought that they were going to be safe.
Well, so's thalidomide, and smoking's recommended to camels, recommended by 9 out of 10 doctors, Steve.
That's right, I remember that.
So, even way back when, Steve, snuff boxes were all the rage.
Yes.
And not the sort of snuff boxes that Mr. Snuffleupagus over here likes. He's redlining himself already.
Yeah, sure.
Jeez, you bastard.
But you've got to remember that the earlier studies, medicines were cocaine.
Sign me up, Steve.
Of course.
You a doctor?
Back then, you took something and you felt a lot better.
Sure.
What harm could it be doing? You feel better. That's all you need. It's like drinking the water. It tastes fine. So this is the scary thing about this radiation now. The blue screen stuff is becoming very clear. That's bad. And it's dose dependent. So what does that mean is if you're checking your phone 2 or 3 times a day, it's fine. But for people who are going to the toilet, and you mentioned that, watching their screen on the toilet or doing something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, people do that all the time.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Wash your hands and your phone when you're finished.
It's, there's a joke about, someone walking out of a gym going, oh, God, you just do leg day because he's hobbling and everything. It's like, oh, no, I was just reading my phone and I sat on the toilet for too long or something. The joke goes like, it wasn't leg day. It was just gobbling out. So this is what happens. People are addicted to these phones.
But Steve, I mean, how will they ever know what all these people are eating if I'm not on social media checking my phone? I mean, there's some very important information, Steve.
It's scary.
Yeah,
it's scary. I mean, the kids thing. I mean, most parents are aware of it, and really, a lot of the mechanisms are through melatonin. So if melatonin can stuff up all your systems in your body, it's pretty scary. And this includes your cardiovascular system.
Yeah.
Because not only does it increase your stress, which increases blood pressure and all that stuff, but it damages that nitric oxide stuff, which causes vasoconstriction. So it's getting you from two ways.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit scary. And, the classic stuff about night shifts and the nurses study from 2001, this is pretty clear stuff. This is not now, it could be bad. It is bad. We're at that point now.
Steve, I want to get into some FAQs as well too. Is there anything else that you want to cover off before we drop this topic for now?
I just think that if you're trying to also fertility, if you're having fertility problems, be careful about this thing too, because melatonin is very much involved in the reproductive system.
Sure.
So that's the big one. That's the one I wanted to get through, and keep your kids off it as much as you can.
And again, we're certainly not the most perfect parents in the world, but what we do is we have a rule ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so Clayton knows at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon, if we haven't got friends over or we're not going somewhere, he can play for a couple of hours, and then we limit that time. At 5:00 it's off, and if he complains, he loses it. Same thing with the iPad. Guard those things. I mean, like the amount of kids, the stories that I'm hearing from Clayton about his classmates staying up until midnight, and even past midnight. He's 9, he's 10. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I remember when I was young, I had a Commodore 64. I mean, that's showing my age now, right? The old Amstrad, the Atari 2600, and the Amstrad, and the Spectrum. I mean, I was addicted to video games the first time that I saw them, and it was one that you plugged into the TV, which had a gun on it. Can you believe it? And there was a little thing in a flashing light, and I think what's that with the two paddles, and you could.
Yeah.
What's that game called?
That was Atari.
Like the tennis. The Atari had it as well too.
And Pong and.
Oh gosh, I mean, like compared to the games that they can play now, even on their phone, it's ridiculous, right?
Well, here's the difference between then and now is I had to play that through the TV.
That's right.
My mother could come along and go slap, do the dishes.
Yes.
And that was it. But now you've got
something that fits in your pocket.
Yeah.
Oh, Mum, I'm just going to the toilet, and then sneak into the room, into the cupboard, or at night, sneak downstairs, grab it, and that is the issue. Is that they can put their headphones on so that you can't hear them, and the damage that it's doing is not great.
I'm not a parent, but I hear from parents that it's a great way to keep the child occupied too. You know what I mean?
Look, parenting by distraction. Here, take this. It's Dennis Waitley said that there was this kid who his parents were turning into a massive loser because they denied him nothing. We want him to be strong, opinionated, individual, learn how to be a leader. And to get him to go to bed at night, they had to put cookies on the stairs, every few stairs up into his bed, and he would eat his chocolate chip cookies and then go into bed, and he would sit there with the rest of the packet and eat it and fall asleep. That's what happens, obviously, when you're abstinent as a parent. I mean, I know it's easy. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when I've been out to breakfast with Tony and the kids are playing up, sometimes it's like, here, watch this while we have a chat. But yeah, you got to be careful. It's
tough. Yeah. It's tough. I'm not a parent, but I can just see how tough it is.
Don't do it, Steve.
Don't do it. No,
it's
I'm
great.
too old now. I'm 49.
Oh, my dad was 52 when he had me.
Really?
Yeah. There's no excuses for you, mate.
God.
But anyway, Steve, anything else?
No, look, that covers it. Just keep the melatonin thing in your mind. That's the scary mechanism.
Yep. Righto, Steve. That's all that we've got time
for.
Thanks very much, Daisy. Please let us know how you get on. Thanks, Steve.
No worries. It's great fun.
No worries. And we'll be back next week with
Matt,
the chosen one.
Yeah. Oh, well. We'll get by.
You're still my favourite.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, mate.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
He's already brought out the red pen. He's cutting it already.
Yeah, cutting it out. Yeah. Jeez, we've done 2 minutes of podcast and 1 minute's made it. So that's good.